What if silence isn't weakness, but the last honest way to exist? In a world built on noise, the quiet ones become an enigma. Their absence hums louder than the constant chatter that fills our screens. Every day, millions of people post their breakfast, their heartbreaks, their fleeting thoughts about sunsets or sorrow, yet a smaller, more deliberate group chooses silence. They scroll through timelines like ghosts in daylight, watching everything, saying nothing. It's easy to call them shy, disconnected, maybe even aloof. But beneath that stillness lies something far more complex. Silence, for them, isn't emptiness, it's control. It's the quiet rebellion against a world addicted to attention. Because attention today is currency. Every click, every post, every confession is an investment in visibility, and visibility has become survival. But when you refuse to play, when you stop offering yourself up to the algorithmic gods, you begin to see the system for what it is, a stage built for validation, not understanding. The quiet ones know this. They understand that the more you reveal, the less you belong to yourself. So they choose to disappear, not out of fear, but out of preservation. They reject the idea that to exist, you must be seen. It's a strange paradox, living in an age where being unseen feels radical. But that's exactly what gives their silence power. It isn't the silence of ignorance or detachment. It's the silence of awareness. These are people who see the architecture of manipulation, who sense the pull of performance in every post, and who quietly step away from it. They don't need to prove that they're alive. Their validation comes from presence, not perception. Still, their stillness unnerves us. We equate visibility with worth. If someone isn't posting, we assume they're hiding. But what if they're just protecting what's real? What if being unseen is the last form of authenticity left? Because in a culture where everything is shared, mystery becomes resistance. And for those who practice it, silence is not a lack of self-expression. It's a refusal to let the world edit their truth. They know something most don't, that the moment you stop performing, you start existing. That sometimes, power doesn't need to announce itself. It just withdraws and watches the world keep shouting into the void. Every scroll is a mirror. Every post, a small audition for belonging. On social platforms, identity no longer grows. It is curated, sharpened, filtered, and performed. The self becomes a product. A caption isn't just a sentence. It's a subtle negotiation with the world. This is who I am. Do you approve? Likes become reassurance, comments become oxygen, and slowly, the line between authenticity and performance begins to dissolve. We start to mistake recognition for reality. The more people see us, the less we see ourselves. It's an invisible theater. Each person playing both actor and audience, both creator and critic. Behind every smiling photo sits a quiet question. Who am I when no one's watching? Social media doesn't just reflect that uncertainty, it deepens it. The endless loop of validation trains us to externalize our worth, to measure our identity through reaction rather than reflection. We craft versions of ourselves that fit the feed, not the soul. The inner self, raw, quiet, contradictory, becomes inconvenient. We hide it behind the persona we've learned to perform. This split, this dissonance between who we are and who we appear to be, is where the shadow self begins to breathe. Jung described the shadow as everything we deny or repress, the impulses, insecurities, and hungers we're too afraid to show. Social media doesn't erase that shadow, it feeds it. Every like fuels envy. Every comparison deepens insecurity. The platform rewards exaggeration and punishes sincerity. You learn to smile wider, pose better, sound wiser, until one day you realize you built a mask so perfect that it smothers you. But not everyone participates in that performance. The ones who don't post, or post rarely, often sense this danger instinctively. They recognize how easy it is to lose oneself in the reflection. Their silence isn't shyness, it's self-preservation. It's a quiet refusal to keep feeding the shadow's hunger for applause. By stepping away, they stop performing and start observing. They begin to see the machinery of identity creation, how every trend sells an illusion, how every performance hides an ache. In choosing not to perform, they begin an early form of individuation, reclaiming the pieces of self once scattered across timelines and comments. While the world chases visibility, they chase coherence. They understand that true selfhood isn't built in public, it's built in solitude. That's the irony of it all. In disconnecting from the crowd, they reconnect with the self. The silence that others mistake for emptiness is actually integration, the slow stitching together of a soul once split by mirrors. Detachment, in the digital age, is often mistaken for indifference. But for some, it's a discipline, a conscious act of reclaiming power from a world designed to scatter it. When you stop posting, you stop performing. And in that stillness, something subtle shifts. You begin to feel ownership over your moments again. There's no audience watching, no silent scoreboard ticking in the background. The laughter, the tears, the small triumphs, they belong entirely to you. Psychologists call this psychological ownership, the sense that something is yours in a way that no one else can touch. Once you share it, that ownership dilutes. Every like, every comment transforms a personal memory into shared property. By keeping it private, you preserve its purity. The same applies to control. People with a strong internal locus of control believe their lives are shaped by their own actions, not by the reactions of others. That belief is rare online. Every platform subtly teaches dependence. We post, we wait, we hope. A moment isn't valid until it's acknowledged. But those who practice silence reverse that pattern. They don't need digital applause to believe they matter. Their validation doesn't live in the hands of strangers. It's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing that your worth doesn't rise and fall with attention. And that's where discipline enters. It takes strength to withhold in a culture built on display. To feel joy and not announce it. To feel pain and not package it. To understand that not every experience needs translation into content. This restraint is not coldness, it's self-respect. It's saying, my life isn't performance, it's a process. My moments don't need witnesses to be real. The dopamine loop that drives social media is seductive. Every notification triggers a small reward. Every share promises significance. But over time, the brain becomes dependent on that drip of validation. It forgets how to feel satisfied without approval. Detachment, then, becomes detox, a deliberate rewiring of reward, from external to internal, from applause to awareness. Those who resist the urge to share everything are not disconnected. They are deeply connected to something quieter and more stable. They realize that presence feels richer when it isn't performed, that attention means more when it isn't divided, that depth begins where display ends. Their silence isn't absence. It's authorship, the choice to own their story instead of selling it to crowd. At first, it feels harmless. Sharing moments, documenting life, collecting memories in pixels. Each post sparks a small thrill, the flicker of acknowledgement, the satisfaction of being seen. But over time, something shifts. The joy of expression becomes a strain of expectation. You start thinking in post before living in moments. The meal isn't just dinner, it's content. The sunset isn't beauty, it's background. Slowly, without realizing it, life becomes a highlight reel you curate instead of experience. The feed turns into a mirror that only reflects what you want to believe about yourself. Then comes the pressure. Every moment shared must outshine the last. Metrics begin to whisper in your ear. Engagement, reach, growth. You start chasing numbers instead of meaning. And when the numbers don't rise, neither does your sense of self. You edit more, share less, polish harder. Authenticity begins to erode under the weight of performance. You become both the actor and the critic, trapped in a stage that never dims. Even happiness becomes a performance cue. Smile wider, caption deeper, pretend you're not exhausted. There comes a point when the applause starts to sound hollow. You scroll through your own profile and realize it no longer feels like you. The colors are bright, but the person behind them is faded. The image reflects, but it doesn't recognize. That's the burnout threshold, the moment you understand you're performing your life instead of living it. The disconnect grows unbearable, and something inside you begins to rebel. You stop posting, not in protest, but in quiet surrender. No farewell, no digital goodbye, just a slow withdrawal into invisibility. People might notice the silence and wonder what happened, but nothing dramatic did. You simply got tired of translating your existence into proof. You reached a point where every act of sharing felt like subtraction, a little less presence, a little less meaning, a little less self. The mirror stopped reflecting anything true, so you turned away. And in that turning, something fragile began to heal. Detachment became not avoidance but survival, the instinct to preserve what remained untouched. In the absence of constant display, you begin to feel yourself again, quieter, slower, unfiltered, and real. There's a certain exhaustion that comes from always being seen. Even when you're not posting, you feel the eyes, imagined or real, waiting, scanning, measuring. Psychologists call it self-presentational pressure, the constant awareness that you are being watched, judged, interpreted. It's a silent anxiety woven into every scroll, every caption, every pause before hitting post. You begin to anticipate how you'll appear, how you'll be read, what version of you people will decide to believe. And slowly, the boundary between living and performing dissolves. You're no longer just existing. You're curating your existence for an invisible audience. That constant awareness breeds fatigue. Every action starts to feel calculated. You wonder if sincerity will be misunderstood, if silence will be read as weakness, if vulnerability will be weaponized. You start censoring yourself before anyone else does. The screen becomes both confession booth and courtroom, and you are always on trial. So when people retreat from posting, it's not cowardice, it's boundary setting. It's saying, I will no longer negotiate my identity in public. It's not that they don't want to be seen. They just want to choose how, when, and by whom. That's where the power shifts. The silent observer is no longer content. They become the chooser of context. By not participating, they reclaim authorship of their own image. They can look without being looked at, think without the noise of reaction. Their invisibility becomes an advantage, a form of control in a system designed to control them. They observe patterns others are too loud to notice. They see the machinery of validation spinning endlessly, and they step outside of it. Still, the desire to be seen never disappears completely. It's human. But for those who've learned the cost of visibility, the craving evolves. They no longer want the shallow glance of strangers. They want the rare gaze of understanding. They crave to be seen truly, not superficially. And when that isn't possible online, they withdraw into real spaces where eyes meet without filters and silence carries meaning. The world may interpret that withdrawal as absence, but in truth, it's power, the power to define yourself beyond perception, to exist without performing, to find control in choosing when not to be seen. When the noise finally fades, something quiet and unfamiliar takes its place. Stillness. At first it feels empty, almost unsettling, like walking through a city after a storm. But slowly, the senses begin to wake. Colors seem deeper. Sound sharpen. The ordinary becomes extraordinary again because it no longer needs to be documented. The coffee tastes stronger when it isn't photographed. Conversations feel fuller when there's no subconscious urge to phrase them like captions. You begin to realize how much life had been diluted by the need to translate it. Once the performance stops, presence returns, and with it comes a forgotten kind of peace. The brain starts to heal from the dopamine script it's been trained to follow. Without the constant loop of likes and notifications, emotion stabilizes. There are no sudden highs or silent crashes of emptiness. Time stretches again, not as a countdown between posts, but as a living thing, elastic and real. Studies show that stepping away from a validation cycle increases satisfaction and focus, but beyond the data lies a deeper truth. When you stop outsourcing meaning, you rediscover it within. The moments that once felt disposable become sacred. Walking, reading, sitting in sunlight, all regain their gravity because they no longer need to prove their worth to anyone. There's also a shift in how you perceive yourself. Without the constant feedback of digital mirrors, identity starts to feel whole again. You are no longer an edited sequence of moments, but an unfiltered continuum of being. The complexity that once felt inconvenient, your contradictions, your moods, your quiet phases, begins to feel natural. You realize that perfection was never the goal, presence was. Living becomes less about performing a coherent story and more about inhabiting the mess of it honestly. In that rediscovery, a philosophical awakening begins. You understand that life doesn't need to be condensed into digestible fragments to be meaningful. It's not meant to be consumed. It's meant to be lived. By stepping off the loop, you stop chasing significance and start feeling it. The world doesn't shrink when you go offline. It expands. The self, once fragmented across screens, gathers its pieces and becomes solid again. Presence becomes a form of healing, a quiet rebellion against the illusion that meaning requires an audience. When the broadcast ends, the real relationships begin. Without the constant stream of updates, you start to see who still reaches out, who texts when there's nothing new to see, who remembers you without a reminder. These are the connections that survive outside the feed, quiet and enduring, built not on visibility but on presence. In that stillness, intimacy takes a different shape. It stops being measured by engagement or public affection and returns to what it was meant to be, a private exchange of trust, a shared silence that doesn't need translation. You learn that closeness isn't about proximity online, it's about attention in real life. The people who matter don't need your highlight reel to feel connected to you. They notice the pauses in your tone, the fatigue behind your eyes, the weight of what you're not saying. Their care isn't performative, it's perceptive. They show up without the need to be seen doing it. And that kind of intimacy feels heavier, warmer, more real. It's not something that can be captured. It only exists in the moment, between two people who are fully there. But to those still caught in the rhythm of exposure, this quiet can seem strange. People might label you as detached, mysterious, maybe even cold. Yet those labels come from misunderstanding. Silence doesn't mean disconnection. It means selectivity. When you know your own depth, you stop scattering it. You stop performing vulnerability for strangers and reserve it for the few who can hold it. It's not emotional distance, it's boundary clarity. You no longer crave to be understood by everyone, only by those who listen in the language of presence. That's the power dynamic at play. In a world obsessed with the crowd's gaze, choosing the few who matter becomes the ultimate act of control. You no longer need validation disguised as attention. You're no longer performing connection for applause. The relationships that remain are stripped of spectacle, and what's left is sincerity, unfiltered, unseen, enough. Intimacy without an audience doesn't shrink your world. It refines it. It removes the noise and leaves behind what's real, a handful of souls who see you clearly, even when the rest of the world isn't looking. Congruence is a quiet art of being the same person when no one's watching. It's what happens when the inner world and the outer expression finally align, when the performance ends, and what remains is simply you. In the digital age, this kind of harmony has become rare. We live split between the self we present and the self we endure. The screen amplifies the difference, forcing us to choose angles, expressions, fragments that best fit the narrative of who we think we should be. Over time, that distortion becomes heavy. The more we project, the less we inhabit. The more we edit, the less we exist. Silence disrupts that cycle. When there's no audience to impress, the need to self-justify fades. You stop rehearsing your emotions for validation and start feeling them as they are. You no longer adjust your truth to fit a feed. You let it breathe in private. And in that privacy, the two selves, the one you show and the one you hide, begin to merge. There's no longer a need to perform coherence because you're already living it. The distance between your internal world and your external image narrows until they feel indistinguishable. That's congruence, not perfection, but alignment. It's in this space that what becomes untethered from attention. You stop measuring yourself through mirrors that move. Approval loses its hold because your identity no longer depends on how you're seen, but on how you feel when no one sees you at all. The silence that once felt empty becomes grounding. It reminds you that presence is the rarest form of wealth in a world built on distraction. The congruent self doesn't need an audience to stay real. It doesn't need applause to stay whole. It just needs stillness, the kind that allows truth to settle quietly into its place, unperformed, undivided, and finally, enough. The question has become a reflex of our time. If you didn't post it, did it even happen? But those who stepped away already know the answer. The truest things rarely announce themselves. The moments that shape you most, the quiet realizations, the private victories, the unseen heartbreaks, belong to a realm untouched by cameras or captions. They happen off-screen, where algorithms can't interpret them, and that's what gives them meaning. Privacy isn't emptiness, it's intimacy with yourself. It's a sanctuary where your experiences remain sacred, unmeasured, and unmanipulated. Invisibility, then, is not insignificance. It's freedom. It's choosing to live unrecorded, to keep something untouched by the world's endless appetite for proof. When you stop performing, your existence doesn't vanish. It deepens. You stop needing to be noticed to feel real. You become the witness of your own life instead of its broadcaster. The moments you once rushed to share now linger, heavier, truer, unfiltered. You start to see that not everything beautiful needs to be seen to matter, and not every truth needs to be translated to exist. And maybe that's a paradox that silence reveals, that meaning grows strongest in privacy, that authenticity expands in invisibility, that peace begins where the performance ends. The world may never know the stories you keep to yourself, but they will live quietly within you, shaping the person no audience could ever define. Because in the end, you're not meant to be content, you're meant to be whole, to be unseen, yet completely real, to stop performing and simply be